And let's welcome in CBS Sports MLB writer Matt Snyder. Matt, the Mariners in the postseason. How about this as they snap a 20-year playoff drought?
That was really, really awesome. Just the way it went down there with Raleigh hitting the walk-off. They couldn't score a run all night. Just scratching and clawing. They hit into so many double plays, and it just seemed like it was never going to happen. And it got to the point in the bottom of the ninth where I just was kind of thinking, like, somebody's going to have to hit a walk-off home run because they're not going to string hits together. They keep hitting into double plays. They keep popping it up. Somebody's going to have to pop one. And then sure enough, it was Cal Raleigh, who almost all of his power, he's a switch hitter, almost all of his power has come from the left side this year. The A's had a righty in to face him, and he's hit a lot of big blasts. He hit one in Cleveland that was big. That was kind of a momentum changer for the team. So it was pretty cool to see it happen. And it was really fitting because they've been kind of the cardiac kids most of the season. Just a really fun night for Seattle.
Yeah, a fitting ending indeed, because Cal Raleigh was pinch hitting and he hits a walk-off homer to send them to the playoffs for the first time since 2001. What does this say about the organization after all these years? And this season has been super, super special. The 14-game winning streak going into the All-Star break. Julio Rodriguez emerging before our eyes. Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, getting Luis Castillo, Jerry Dipoto putting it all together. What does it say about the season that they are having to finally culminate to a playoff year?
Well, they're set up pretty well. And I hope that Seattle is really rallying behind this team as much as it can because, as you said, they've got a lot of young guys. They've got a good foundation there with Gilbert and Kirby in the rotation, Julio Rodriguez leading the position players along with the supporting cast with guys like Raleigh. But it's not just those guys. It's veterans like 2021 Cy Young winner Robbie Ray in the rotation. They traded for Luis Castillo, as you said, and they extended him to a 5-year deal. So they're going to have their big four in the rotation. They're going to have those guys for the foreseeable future. Rodriguez is already a superstar. He's going to be an MVP candidate for the next 10 years or so. I mean, they have him locked up for a long time, and he's only 21 years old. So this, for the Mariners, they can rally around this being the beginning of something. Hopefully they get to have at least one home playoff game because it'll be really cool to see T-Mobile rocking in the playoffs. It's been too long. It's been since 2001. But for now, they deserve to celebrate because it's been so long. And I guess we also have to kind of send our condolences to Sacramento because now the Sacramento Kings have the longest playoff drought in North American professional sports. I believe it's been since 2006. Even though I'm not an NBA guy.
Yeah, that's you're right. That they do have a long playoff drought, but this one gets snapped. After 20 years, the Mariners are headed back to postseason. I mean, this is a fun team to watch, Matt. Just from a fan's perspective, I mean, Eugenio Suarez, a veteran that came over in the trade for Jesse Winker. Carlos Santana signing a deal to come play in Seattle at the end of his career. Veteran presence. And then the rookies littered up and down this roster. Jared Kelenic in the trade with the Mets. I mean, all of this is starting to come to fruition in terms of the deals they've made, the guys that they've drafted, the guys that they've, basically brought up through their systems, and then they go out and get guys, Robbie Ray, Luis Castillo. I mean, this is a team that could make some noise in the playoffs. And if the season ended today, they would have to go against the Toronto Blue Jays, also a young team with a plentiful of stars on that roster. But this is a team that could turn some heads in the playoffs.
They absolutely could. If you wanted to paint the optimistic picture about this team, you could talk about the offense with, again, Julio leading the charge as the stolen base and home run threat, but the home runs could really stack up with this group. People you mentioned like Winker and Haniger and Suarez, Carlos Santana, they have some high-octane power hitters in that lineup that if everybody's going right at the same time, that could be a really scary lineup. We already talked about the rotation. In the playoffs, the rotation is 4 guys. We talked about that kind of the big 2 with the veterans, but then the 2 rookies. That could be a really nice foursome. And then if you go to the bullpen, it's kind of a no-name bullpen to a lot of the country, but people like Paul Sewald and Penn Murphy and Andres Munoz, they have some really big power arms at the back end of that bullpen. And you could kind of see a lot of playoff games where they get 6 or 7 out of the starters, then they turn it over to the power arms in the bullpen, and they hit a few timely home runs, maybe a 3-run home run, maybe then a late clutch solo shot like we saw from Cal Raleigh tonight. You could really kind of see how this could snowball into a late run into the playoffs. I'm not betting on it because the Astros are so good, but you could see how it could happen. You could kind of squint your way there to seeing them making a deep run.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a Guardians fan, and I would rather not see the Mariners in the first round of the wild card round because, like see here, Ty France had an all-star season. You mentioned Jesse Winker and Suarez. I mean, J.P. Crawford. Like, this is a team that has major potential. And I'm excited for the city of Seattle. I'm excited for Mariners fans because this has been a long time coming for them to make the playoffs. When you look at how this roster has been built and what Jerry Dipoto has done, holding there with Scott Service, what does that say to you about Jerry Dipoto to be able to get this done in Seattle with this roster finally coming together and now making noise at the end of the regular season here and finally getting into the playoffs?
Well, when you said if you look at how this roster has been built, the first word that came to my mind was aggressively. He's incredibly aggressive. I think a lot of people would say fearless. I think some people would say reckless almost. But I like him and A.J. Preller down in San Diego. They've actually matched up a few times, but I like that they aren't scared to go out and make moves and shake things up and mix up the roster. Even if a lot of people don't like the moves that they make, they're aggressive instead of just sitting on their hands and being too scared to make moves. It's really worked out well. A lot of the deals that Dipoto has made have led to this point and have really worked out well. Some of the ones that didn't even work out that well, it wasn't even that big of a deal. I think about the Cano deal, for example, because it sent Edwin Diaz to the Mets. That's a huge deal. Diaz is probably the best closer in baseball this year. But I just said the Mariners back into their bullpen is really good right now. One of the reasons why that deal hasn't worked out that much for the Mariners is Jared Kelenic hasn't really panned out yet, but he's still young, and they got Cano off the books. So even the moves where you might say, oh, it didn't really work out that well, it wasn't even that big of a deal. I like that he's aggressive. I like that he's not scared to go out and make moves and to shake his roster up. And sometimes he has to go into the clubhouse and have a conversation with the guys. Remember last year in front of the trade deadline, they traded Kendall Graveman, their closer, away. Sometimes that's going to happen when you're that aggressive. But right now, it looks like he's made a lot of correct moves to get them to this point.
Yeah, it's incredible to see what they have accomplished. I mean, a fun team. I'm happy for them. Again, it's good for baseball when you see teams like this, when all this hard work gets paid off. And look, let's sit here and be realistic about it too, right? And they do have the second wild card spot right now, but that added wild card spot has certainly helped teams like the Mariners, teams like the Brewers and Phillies fighting for that wild card spot in a season they may not have a chance. And this is what that added playoff spot adds into Major League Baseball. So we can't forget about that. But this is what's fun, to see these teams have been struggling for years to finally get into the playoffs and to snap a 20-year drought, Matt. That's fun. And you're right. Even though you're not an NBA guy, you're a sports guy. And the Kings. And what if I told you if we had a producer who was a Mariners fan and a Kings fan? So he's got one drought that's snapped, but the Kings drought's still going. You know that producer, Ryan Stryker.
Then you can maintain positivity and say Kings are next. You know, we just got the Mariners. Now the Kings are next. But, here's the thing about the added wild card spot. For me, is the more fan bases that are involved in the playoff races, the better for the game as a whole. Anytime a playoff drought gets broken, or anytime a drought period gets broken, and I say that as a Cubs fan, obviously, but still, anytime any drought gets broken, that's good for the sport because there's great fanfare in that city and in that fan base. And there are Mariners fans, young Mariners fans this season who might be fans for life, especially after that Cal Raleigh walk-off. Maybe there's a 7-year-old Mariners fan watching with his or her parents and saw that. They're going to remember that moment for the rest of their lives. And, that's the way you grow the game on a national level for me is stuff like that. Having droughts broken, having as many fan bases as possible involved in the playoff races. That's the good stuff.
Tough not to get romantic about baseball. Matt Snyder with his perspective here on CBS Sports HQ as the Mariners snap a 20-year playoff drought. Matt, thank you. How about that? The Seattle Mariners. Could you imagine being a Mariners and a Kings fan? Yeah, I know one. I'm not kidding you. And, hey, he's happy. 20 seasons. It's over. Mariners back in the postseason for the first time since 2001 as it is walk me off in Seattle and walk me into the playoffs.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.